Well, I'm in love.
The simple pleasures in life, like enjoying a sip of water, breathing, or simply taking a leak, are just some of the sacrifices actors make to bring us our favorite movies. Check out the crazy things actors will put up with in order to get the shot. Number 1. Cat prosthetics, like cats, are evil. You may be surprised to find out that kitty cat polyjuice transformation Hermione went through in Harry Potter wasn't CGI. And it wasn't even Emma Watson either. Turns out Emma had a horrible allergic reaction to the glue they were using on her face. So, stunt double Flick Miles filled in for the scene. The shot isn't entirely without CGI though, as the cat eyes were created in post. Maybe the movie Cats could take a lesson or two from Harry Potter in feline makeup. Number 2. As opposed to non-axe-istant danger? Brett Beatty was more than just a stunt double for Rhys Davies in Lord of the Rings because, as it turns out, the actor was allergic to his prosthetics. And this one time Beatty had to throw an axe, he accidentally nicked his eyebrow. Now here's the freaky part. Because he was wearing a prosthetic mask, the blood couldn't get out and actually started building up under the mask. And eventually, one of the eye bags, which was glued on, ruptured and the blood started spurting out. Despite how horrific the whole event sounds, apparently it looked a lot worse than it was. Number 3. Stellan Skarsgård found himself in a bit of a sticky situation while filming Dune.
I did not want to drown in that black goo that I was dipping into there.
His suit weighed about 88 pounds, which, by the way, is the weight of a baby hippopotamus. The exact look the director was going for. Skarsgård needed a cooling vest hooked up inside the suit so he wouldn't have a stroke. And then they found the man was too buoyant for the oil, and they had to stab holes in the suit so he would sink. Number 4. Just 10 minutes of yoga and you'll be fine. We've all been there. Curled up in weird positions on our computer chair, watching YouTube videos for hours on end, and waking up with a crook in the neck in the morning. Selma Hayek experienced something similar while filming Eternals. Apparently it gets tiring carrying all that extra weight around on your head. Who would have thought? She's not one for complaining though, and she did love the experience. Number 5. Didn't anybody teach Johnny Depp not to run with scissors? The suit he was wearing was supposedly so hot and tight it actually caused him to pass out from running. While there are lots of stories about actors coming close to passing out, this is the first we've heard of it actually happening. He didn't tell anyone he was experiencing any dizziness ahead of time, or we're sure they would have been there with water. Number 6. Do beasts sweat, or do they pant? Dan Stevens, who played the Beast in the live-action Beauty and the Beast, had to use stilts and wear a muscle vest. He also needed to wear a cooling vest to keep him from overheating. And honestly, the best part of this story is the fact he had to eat 4 whole roast dinners a day to stop himself from wasting away. Funny, this reminds us of one of the songs from the movies. When I was a lad, I ate 4 whole roast dinners. The craft table on that set must have been amazing. Number 7. And we don't mean the A-list actors. Turns out Christian Bale could barely breathe in his costume because when it was cold, the material would get tight on his head. It got so difficult to breathe, he recounts seeing stars. And Bale had a thing or two to say to Robert Pattinson, who's taking up the character in 2022, telling him, just make sure you're going to be able to relieve yourself. Honestly, that's good advice. Tom Holland had the same struggle. Why is nobody building a secret zipper into these things? Number 8. Ruby Rose has a bit more than rosy cheeks after her time in The Mask. She had a latex allergy that only got worse throughout filming. Her hives got so bad, she decided not to return for a second season. Poor Ruby. All she had to say was, eventually, I took off the cowl at the end and my whole face was hives. My throat was all messed up. It was like it was out of a scary movie. Maybe they could have recast her as the Polka Dot Man's sister or something. Number 9. Listen to your mother's advice. After months of wearing caked-on makeup and heavy prosthetics, Jessica Chastain found her skin stretched out and feared she'd done permanent damage to it. When she finally took all that makeup off and truly saw herself for the first time, she said she recounts looking 50 years old. For the record, she's 44 years old right now. If you keep making that face long enough, we guess it really does get stuck like that. Hopefully after a few weeks it bounced back. Number 10. Maybe in this case, do let go. In a weird twist of fate, Kate Winslet almost drowned while filming the Titanic. She remembers running away from a wave that crashed against a closed gate. Her coat was snagged, and she suddenly found herself submerged in water, and she had to struggle to get herself free. All we can picture now is Jack saying, "Never let go," from atop the floating door. You're welcome to steal this great fanfic idea, by the way. Number 11. We're pretty sure that isn't how you kill a zombie. The life of an actor sounds glamorous in theory, but when you've got a 1 a.m. makeup call for a 6 a.m. start, it seems a little less ideal. Army of the Dead's Richard Citrone found himself in this situation when he was playing Zeus the Zombie King. Early mornings, long days in a silicone costume that didn't breathe, filming in Albuquerque in 100-degree weather. Now we can see what Taika Waititi was on about in Free Guy.
Albuquerque boiled turkey.
Staying hydrated is important, to say the least. Number 12. Surprisingly, the cause isn't your annoying little brother.
We're getting wrapped at 4:11, and I don't mean wrapped like goodbye for the day.
This Is Us star Mandy Moore had to deal with different prosthetics depending on what age she was playing in the show. When she was playing 68-year-old Rebecca, she started the makeup process by taking Advil to protect from the inevitable headache she would endure while her hair was pinned back. We feel you, girl. There's no better feeling than removing a ponytail at the end of the day. Number 13. Girls just wanna have fun. Well, boys do too. While Tom Holland is no stranger to women's fashion, he was not too happy with needing to wear a thong under the Spidey suit. This was not optional. And coming in second place for most uncomfortable part of the suit has to be Holland drinking water through a straw, protruding out of the suit's eye. Number 14. Washing off your makeup after a long day is no joke. Washing Margot Robbie's makeup off during Suicide Squad was a pain in the, little monster? They set up a pop-up tent inside an abandoned building, stood her in a kiddie pool, and sprayed her down with Hudson sprayers. We were relieved to find out a Hudson sprayer was not a fire hose, but it still sounds uncomfortable. Number 15. That's not the way menthol's supposed to be used. Joe Keery was a gooey, snotty-nosed mess during the filming of Stranger Things, in the scene where his character was getting beat up. He had a sponge stuffed up his nose and menthol blown into his eyes. Not much acting is really necessary in a scene where you're actually looking and feeling like total garbage.
I was like all swollen underneath the makeup.
Number 16. It does not get worse than this. The final battle in Twilight had Elizabeth Reeser, who played Esme Cullen, in a ton of pain. Normally, snow in the eye isn't painful, but when you're wearing contacts and that snow is actually made out of paper, it's bound to hurt in a whole new way. Her eyelids swelled up from it. One of the worst possible things we can imagine is paper cuts in the eyes. Are your eyes itchy now too? Let's move on. 17. Still better than bad breath. Being Cinderella seems like a dream come true, until you remember the impossible beauty standards thrust upon women in Hollywood. There were some news reports that Lily James's waist had been digitally shrunk down in her ball gown. But nope. Lily was squeezed into a very tiny corset. She couldn't eat in costume, and so was just chugging back liquids because it's all she could digest. And she had to take frequent breaks while they filmed dance scenes because she found herself breathless. And not because any prince was sweeping her off her feet. And her shoes. They were made of real Swarovski crystals. They were incredibly painful, and the actor couldn't even get them on.
It doesn't fit a foot because it's made of Swarovski crystal.
Number 18. Trust us, complaining doesn't get you anywhere. Barry Keoghan was a big complainer about the 3 layers to his costume, especially when it came to the heat.
It's like 3 layers to it, and I complained every day about it.
While boiling alive in a superhero suit isn't anything new for actors, we can definitely say we empathize with him all the same.
It's quite hard to move in.
Number 19. We're not talking about bearded dragons. Did you hear about the real flaming beard that was used in Pirates of the Caribbean? Here comes the smolder. Actor Vince Lozano was burned, other people were burned, and the beard actually caught on fire. Seriously, this one should have just been done with CGI. Number 20. For what was supposed to be a floating scene, she sure was weighed down a lot.
She blows up like a balloon and floats away, and it's a lot easier to say that than it is to do it.
Pam Ferris blowing up like a balloon as Aunt Marge in Harry Potter wasn't CGI. Her inflatable suit had 3 stages of prosthetics and weighed about 50 pounds. It contained special pumps, degassing chambers for inflating and deflating the suit, and expandable rubber bladders. Seriously, they couldn't find better names for this stuff? The crazy part is, the suit caused her to faint while they were filming the scene.
Kind of enjoyed wallowing in it. It was helpful. Sort of self-inflicted pain.
Disney characters look effortlessly ethereal, but working 16-hour days in tight costumes with thick prosthetics isn't exactly a magical experience. Behind the scenes, there were fake faces, complicated contacts, and some of the most restrictive corsets in the world. You might see these live-action scenes differently once you know how these actors really felt after being poked and prodded into fairy tale perfection.
Once you put those things on, you feel like Cruella de Vil.
Emma Stone had 47 looks to wear in the upcoming Cruella movie. She even had to let makeup artists graffiti her face. But the most challenging outfits for Emma were those which had super long trains, particularly the garbage truck dress, which had a train that was 40 feet long.
It's like things you only ever imagined and think you would actually put on your body and carry behind you on a garbage truck.
She couldn't even move with it on, so the train had to be added to the dress after Emma climbed on the back of the truck. A scene we'll have to wait to see in the movie if we want to know how well she actually pulled it off. For Cruella, Emma Stone did a lot of climbing while wearing epic dresses. This look, with an incredibly long red train, had to be worn while the actress climbed on top of a car. Pulling the skirt around the car without it getting caught was the hardest part, and not letting the weight of the dress pull her to the ground. Co-star Emma Thompson gave her props for her skill in maneuvering the heavy dress, saying she had to put it around the car about 1,000,000 times because it was so hard to get right.
Every single part is so beautifully played.
To become the Beast, Dan Stevens had to walk around on stilts and wear a 40-pound prosthetic muscle suit covered with visual effects indicators that tracked his every movement. He compared the stilts to wearing 10-inch high heels.
It's an ordeal for my calf muscles alone.
Thankfully, he wore a cooling unit under his suit that could be plugged in between takes so he didn't overheat.
What a regrettably large head you have. I should very much like to have it.
It wasn't just CGI that made the Red Queen's head huge in Alice in Wonderland. Helena Bonham Carter also had a prosthetic forehead applied to make her head seem larger and push back her hairline. The 3-pound wig on top of her head didn't make things any more comfortable, and costume designer Colleen Atwood outfitted her with an Elizabethan dress with a high collar. The actress's head was then digitally enhanced to appear 3 times its normal size on film. But that meant Helena had to be really careful about not bringing her hands anywhere near her head while acting, so they wouldn't interfere with the special effects.
They reminded me ever so often that I was much wider than I thought.
Ever find yourself wishing you had a pair of Cinderella's glass slippers? Well, you should count yourself lucky that you don't. While the original plan was to have Lily James wear the slippers, it turns out they were much too painful and she couldn't even get them on.
It doesn't fit a foot. Because it's made of Swarovski crystal.
Real ones were designed for the film, but the slippers we see the princess actually wear are completely CGI.
They're made of glass. Yes.
Turning Angelina Jolie into Maleficent was a daunting task. Every day it took 3 hours to apply her prosthetics and later remove her prosthetics, and she had to wear them for 16 hours a day. Jolie insisted on their use herself. They included teeth, nose, ear, and cheek pieces.
Once the horns go on, you start to, mind you, the first few days you knock your head on everything.
And while wearing them wasn't the most comfortable thing in the world, having them applied and then removed was by far the most painful part of the process, as it involved a lot of poking and prodding the actress's skin. Turning Johnny Depp into the Mad Hatter involved some complicated contacts and crooked teeth. He was transformed by makeup artist Valley O'Reilly and hairstylist Terry Belial. The orange wig and clown-like makeup was a daunting task, but what was most uncomfortable were these kooky contacts the actor wore for all his scenes. But Depp knew exactly what he was signing up for, since the Mad Hatter's look was based on watercolors by the actor and director Tim Burton.
Oh, great one who summons me, terrible one who commands me.
Creating the genie for Aladdin meant putting Will Smith in a motion capture suit. The real uncomfortable part of this costume wasn't that it was too stiff or restrictive, it was that it was thin and skin tight, not leaving much to the imagination. It was done this way so they could catch the actor's angles and movements perfectly, since the genie isn't technically wearing clothes.
That is actually me. It's a 100% CGI character.
Emma Watson loved Belle's yellow ball gown, but it was actually a deceivingly thick dress to wear. It was made from multiple layers of satin organza. To add a modern look to the gown, 2,160 Swarovski crystals were added to the top layer of the dress. Multiple copies of the dress were created for these scenes, taking over 12,000 hours to make in total.
I had the big dress on, he had the ridiculous beast thing, we were like, it was very bonding.
To accommodate Aladdin's running along rooftops, the design team traded pointy-toe slippers for sturdier, custom-designed ankle boots, but not every one of his outfits was made for comfort. Aladdin eventually has his Prince Ali makeover, and has to wear copious layers of ivory and gold, including a long cape and an oversized turban, embellished with ostrich feathers. It was sweltering in the heat, so performing in this costume was the least fun part of filming, no matter how good he looked. Did you know that acrobatic performers have to wear tight corsets despite all their flips and tricks? Actress Eva Green found that out the hard way when she performed many of her own aerial stunts in Dumbo. She had to trade her comfortable and flexible training outfit for a circus outfit that was much more restrictive and had many decorative pieces for her to be aware of, as well as a perfectly coiffed wig. Colleen Atwood designed the costumes as circus performer accurate as possible, which meant a pretty tight, stiff bodice.
And I was so scared of heights. It was real phobia. And I really panicked at the beginning.
Any brunette who bleaches their hair will know it is not easy. But for Alice in Wonderland, actress Mia Wasikowska insisted on having her hair really bleached to the perfect blonde instead of just wearing a wig. She went through endless hair dyeing sessions and touch-ups during filming, and since her hair is pin straight, the waves had to be touched up between almost every take. The fairy godmother's dress in Cinderella was the biggest dress created for the movie, with incredible volume that actress Helena Bonham Carter was basically swimming in.
So the dress was a piece of architecture.
Sandy Powell spared no effort designing the costume.
This costume is not like the rest, actually. Underneath here is a crinoline cage, which actually gives it the silhouette.
There are LED lights and 10,000 Swarovski crystals hooked up to it with tiny, fine wires, so Helena had to be incredibly careful with it, especially while running in some of her scenes. When it came to making Maleficent fly, a pretty simple costume addition ended up being one of the most challenging things for Angelina Jolie to wear and perform in. The wings were CGI, but Jolie actually had to wear little stumps on her back so they could digitally add the wings later. This proved a challenge because she had to always be sure to move as if she had huge wings protruding from her back. The most painful part of getting these wings just right was the fork-like rig she and other flying characters had to be hooked up to when filming their flight scenes. Mulan's costume designer, Bina Degler, knew exactly how she wanted to bring one of the character's most iconic looks to life. But it wasn't an easy outfit for actress Liu Efei to perform in. There are multiple layers of robe, underdress, panels, and a sash that all add drama and flow to the outfit. It nearly took 4 weeks to embroider and 40 feet of material. It wasn't as light and easy to move in as it seems, so actress Liu Efei was tasked with making movement in the heavy costume look effortless.
That might be not every day everyone could experience.
Creature actor Ed Osmond had to wear a very strange suit to become Dumbo. While all we see on screen is the incredible CGI, behind the scenes he had to wear a green suit and crutch-like arm extensions. He was walking on all fours for about 3 hours per day, proving his role in the movie was one of the hardest to master. Becoming Elliot the Dragon for the live-action Pete's Dragon was another daunting task that required a huge green suit. Motion capture actor Eric Sinden had to wear a massive green wire mesh head so it would look like the actors were really interacting with the dragon. Sure, it was heavy and bulky, but the size also made it super easy to track, and later alter with CGI.
We were able to capture exactly what he was seeing, and we were going to be able to put that back on the screen.
Makeup artist and designer Denise Kum was responsible for Mulan's incredible matchmaking makeup, but the look was thick and made facial expressions challenging. Each stage was layered with a mix of pigments, fashion makeup, and conventional makeup, and it was all literally painted onto Mulan's face. While Mulan cuts her hair in the animated version, designing hair for the live-action version was also much different and involved applying tons of hair pieces to Liu Yifei's hair. Lily James and the live-action Cinderella were in the news a lot over reports that her waist had been digitally shrunk in her ball gown, but in reality it was just a very tight and painful corset.
I'm in this corset, so it's really hard to breathe.
It took 20 minutes to get Lily in and then out of the dress and corset, which took 20 people to make and featured 10,000 Swarovski crystals and 3 miles of hems. Princess Jasmine has more than 10 outfit changes during the film. The most painful dress Naomi Scott had to wear was this royal pink number. The bodice was tight and restrictive, and it was embellished with heavy gold coins that the actress had to be careful not to rattle too much or catch on anything while moving around. The most challenging costume for Emily Blunt to wear as Mary Poppins was this dress. While they look like they have ruffles and fabric details, it's all painted on to blend in with the animation of the scene, which also affected the way Emily had to wear the costumes. She had to carry them as if they did have ruffles and voluminous skirts, and make sure her movements didn't make the dresses fall flat, turning 2D designs into a 3D dress.
Gone through 3 hours of makeup and then stand in front of the mirror and see yourself transformed.
For some, acting in a Harry Potter movie sounds like a dream come true. But when you realize how incredibly uncomfortable some of the makeup effects were, it might make things seem a little less appealing. From transforming humans into Gringotts goblins, to the hours of makeup to bring Voldemort to life, and even a giant body double for Hagrid, some of the most iconic Harry Potter makeup transformations were seriously painful for the actors underneath it all.
Had prosthetics on before, and it's like, it can be tough, it can be like hard work.
For the second task in the Goblet of Fire, Harry had to eat gillyweed and grow gills so he could swim into the Black Lake, which you might assume would all be done with CGI. But nope, they actually did it for real. The gills were made out of silicone and silk so that they would billow underwater. They had to be glued onto Daniel Radcliffe's neck so firmly so that they would stay put during the long underwater filming process, and also during the harrowing scene where he had to swim to the surface carrying 2 heavy, lifelike dolls of Ron and Gabrielle Delacour. In the end, Daniel said that he was really proud that he made it through.
Good God, who's that, really?
Robbie Coltrane, who plays Hagrid, is tall, but not giant tall. In order to transform him into the half-giant Hagrid, they gave him risers in his shoes and padded him with heavy costumes, extra wigs, and prosthetics to make him appear larger. But they also brought in a 6'4" body double for wide shots, who had to wear some massive padding and a prosthetic animatronic Hagrid head. Because the costume was so huge and heavy, they actually attached tubes that pumped cold water into it, so the body double didn't overheat and pass out.
The embarrassment of seeing yourself 18 feet high in front of a lot of people you don't know.
In order to transform human actors into Gringotts goblins, the makeup team started their work at 4 a.m. They created molds of each actor's face and created a combination of rubber masks and individual prosthetic parts to attach one by one. The actors also had to have their hands covered with extensive makeup and prosthetic pieces, long fake fingernails, and dentures to finish off the look. Each goblin took 4 hours to get ready, and they even wore contact lenses that obscured their vision so much that they needed chaperones to help get them around the set.
On this one, we're doing 45 full prosthetic makeups.
British actor Warwick Davis not only played Professor Flitwick, the first goblin bank teller, but also Griphook in the Harry Potter series.
Very unusual, is it?
To make sure he was unrecognizable from one character to the next, it took hours and hours in the makeup chair. First, they created a cast of his face, which involved sitting under layers of silicone and plaster for hours, and only his nose holes free to breathe. Once the prosthetic pieces for Griphook were applied, Warwick said he had to relearn how to use his face underneath all those extra layers, and totally adjust his voice to speak through the false teeth.
Hello. Ready for the office.
In order to make the actor who played Dumbledore's brother Aberforth look as much like Michael Gambon as possible, they used a lot of makeup and extensive wigs. The makeup crew added silicone to his forehead and face to push back his hairline, applied prosthetic bags under his eyes, completely changed his eyebrows, and, of course, added his long hair and beard to finish off the look.
It was quite interesting because, in a way, you were working on a blank canvas.
Even though you might think it was CGI, the scene in which Harry accidentally blows up his Aunt Marge was all done in camera. It took 20 people to build and apply the inflatable suit to Pam Ferris, the actress who played Aunt Marge, and included pumps, degassing chambers, and inflatable bladders. They even created a balloon shaped and painted like her face, attached it to her body, and pumped it full of air to give the effect of her face inflating. To film Professor Lupin turning into a werewolf, they created each step of the transformation on the actor David Thewlis with prosthetic makeup before adding CGI in post. The makeup team wanted to avoid the cliché werewolf transformation, so they focused on changing his eyes and bringing out the 2 huge scars across his face with makeup and silicone. Each step of the transformation took 6 hours to complete, and they actually built fake, moving body parts that were attached to David so they could capture as much as possible in camera.
That turned out not to be practical, much to my relief, because it looked really very uncomfortable to do that.
When it came to Peter Pettigrew, the makeup team tried hard to connect the human version of Pettigrew to Scabbers the rat through his hair, skin texture, and hands. The actor sat for hours in the makeup chair as they added the gray, balding wig, browning teeth, dirty, pointy nails, and skin texture until he was almost entirely covered in makeup and itchy fake hair.
It's a horrible profession, but I think you should be an actor.
Even though we might not realize it, Lucius Malfoy undergoes a serious change over the course of the Harry Potter movies. The actor said he went from a simple, natural look and wig application to a lot more time in the makeup trailer. They added prosthetic bags under his eyes and very heavy, pale makeup to make him look as tired and unhealthy as the character needed to be.
The 8th film has become a shadow of his former self.
If Polyjuice Potion were a real thing, it would be much easier than what Brendan Gleeson went through to become Mad-Eye Moody. They spent hours adding an entire layer of skin over his real face to build the eye and its holder into, in order to make it look like it was embedded in his face. They covered his real eye in tape and added the bulging glass eye over it, so for the entire shoot he could only see out of one eye. The magical eye was radio controlled by a crew member who made it swivel around, but sometimes it would actually pop out.
Sponge the transfers onto my scalp and face.
Seeing Voldemort for the first time was a huge undertaking because of how enormous the fans' expectations were for that exact moment. In order to transform the handsome Ralph Fiennes into the Dark Lord, they used a combination of makeup and prosthetics. The process took hours, but luckily he only had to do the full transformation about 60 to 70 times throughout the whole series, and about 50 of those times were for the last 2 movies. Rafe still wanted to be able to act under it all, so they covered his eyebrows, reshaped his eyes, added long, creepy fingernails, and false teeth. But the transformation wasn't complete until they removed his nose using CGI.
Sort of slightly translucent, vein-like quality.
We all remember the scene where Harry breaks his arm playing Quidditch, and Gilderoy Lockhart comes along to fix it, but ends up removing all the bones instead. Well, that wobbly, boneless arm wasn't CGI at all, but was actually a prosthetic that they actually attached to the real Daniel Radcliffe. And guess what? He still has it. Along with a few pairs of Potter glasses, Daniel said that he has that creepy fake arm sitting in his attic, all these years later.
But I don't seek them out.
When creating Professor Trelawney, Emma Thompson had the idea that since she is always looking into the future, the divination teacher can't really see where she is in the present. So they came up with her famous Coke bottle glasses. While they were perfect for making her eyes look very funny and large, they were actually quite uncomfortable as they magnified everything around her.
You must look beyond.
For the enormous battle at Hogwarts, the makeup team worked overtime to apply fake blood and wounds to the literally hundreds of actors and background performers playing the students and members of Dumbledore's army. The actors, especially Matthew Lewis, who played Neville Longbottom, had to wear itchy, uncomfortable fake blood and silicone prosthetic wounds for days on end during filming, which got very tiresome in the end.
which was great to start with, you know, blood and cuts and bruises, and it takes like 2 hours.
To transform the very young, very famous actors into older versions of themselves, it required lots of prosthetics and makeup, but not too much. According to the crew, the first old age test made Ron look about 75 years old and seriously unhealthy. Eventually, they found a good balance. Did it work? Well, that's for you to decide.
Harry, please.
Everyone knows actors and actresses deal with the stress of hair and makeup on set, but did you ever think that their on-screen makeup and prosthetics might be taking a toll on them? Anyone who wears makeup knows just how annoying putting it on and taking it all off again can be. But wait till you see the painstaking process that these 15 actors were put through in their makeup transformations to make you feel truly grateful for your own makeup routine. Stick around to see how these actors and actresses dealt with these sticky makeovers. After 20 different makeup tests to find the perfect shade of blue for Jennifer Lawrence's character Mystique, the process of completing this actress's makeup for the X-Men film was already proving to be challenging. Can you believe it took 6 girls 7 hours to fully paint the actress's body?
Which every woman knows is our dream come true.
In order to keep herself up and at 'em during the application process, Lawrence would either stand or work out on a bicycle to keep her blood pumping. Not only was Lawrence's full blue bodysuit of makeup arduous to get on, but it was painful to keep on, as the actress reported the blue paint to be irritating to her skin, causing boils and blisters to her complexion.
Apparently they've simplified the bluing of you.
Turns out they never had to do 8 hours of full-blown body paint ever.
Oh.
As much as the prosthetics used on Anya Chalotra may have added to her role on the set of The Witcher, the very same prosthetics that enhanced her acting abilities also caused her physical harm.
And the costume and the blood and the sweat.
After being fitted with a hunchback to make her character that much more believable, the star fell victim to a pulled nerve, causing her lots of pain. The thickness of her costume caused even more sweaty discomfort that the actress had to deal with during her time on set. She even said, "I have a trapped nerve in my back that I had to get massaged out after playing her for so long." It was very uncomfortable.
How much for this beast?
From a full-blown head cast to hours of makeup, it's no wonder Anne Hathaway needed to vent about her makeup experience for the Witches movie. She took to Instagram and called her makeup look her resting witch face. After sitting through having her whole head enveloped in whatever that is, in order to mold her facial prosthetics, Hathaway must have needed to take a well-deserved breather from her makeup process.
If you notice, in the length of the video, because it's a time lapse, I got stuck.
After insisting upon the use of prosthetics herself, Angelina Jolie was fitted with cheek, nose, ear, and teeth prosthetics to bring her character in Maleficent to life. Angelina stated in an interview,
We didn't want her to be somebody that when you were staring at her during a real dramatic scene, that you were distracted by her makeup.
So it had to be extreme, but her soul had to come out. Despite its simplicity, this makeup look took a full 3 hours to apply and 1 hour to take off every day. And Jolie wore it for 16 hours at a time. Ouch.
And it was like living out some childhood fantasy.
You know that being in such intense makeup for his role as Vision was in no way comfortable, as Paul Bettany is seen ripping off his full face makeup, which might be the most painful part of the process. This makeup look takes the actor only an hour and a half of application time. Not too shabby compared to some of the other actors on this list. The most uncomfortable part of Bettany's prosthetic setup is his lack of hearing, with makeup artists having to make adjustments to his prosthetics in order for him to be able to hear at all.
And I didn't think for a minute what that was actually going to mean to me physically.
Ryan Reynolds' painful makeup application for his character Deadpool was truly grueling because of the time that went into the look. Reynolds was a good sport, maybe even too good of a sport, as he pranked his makeup artist by ripping off his facial prosthetics after hours of application.
If you're not going to do it right, there's no point in doing it at all.
During John Rhys Davies' startling transformation into Gimli, the actor had to face terrible makeup processes, which left him barely able to see and made his skin break out in an allergic reaction. The Lord of the Rings actor had to work on alternate days in order to give his skin a break from the harsh makeup process.
You can't really see my brows moving, all the rest of it.
In order to transform lead actor Jacob Tremblay into a boy with the genetic disorder Treacher-Collins syndrome, makeup artists needed full-body prosthetics to make it work. The makeup itself took an hour and a half of painfully meticulous application and suited Jacob up in a full head of prosthetics. No way is it comfortable wearing a fake face and head for 9 whole hours of shooting.
It was like there was a nice cozy warm cocoon around your head.
Game of Thrones is known for its creative and interesting character design. Kai Alexander's role as Leaf was no exception to this imaginative creativity. The most painful thing about this makeover process was definitely its runtime, as Kai had to sit for nearly 10 hours to get this makeup on and ready for the spotlight.
I sat in a chair for 10 hours, top to bottom, including the wig.
Even makeup artist David White calls Nebula's makeup look the most complex and interesting of any of the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It was very challenging, especially on a female. I had to be sexy and kind of comic book, but believable.
This makeup look was so intense it took 5 hours of application, and even required Karen to shave her head. She knew this going into the audition process, but didn't really get a chance to process the bald-headed change until she got the role. I don't know if dedication to a makeup look gets more uncomfortable than that.
And I might have done something a little bit crazy.
This not very well-known actress has had an even less well-known transformation into Pepper from American Horror Story Asylum. The makeup look that transformed her into Pepper takes about 3 hours and 2 makeup artists, including blinding her in one eye with a contact lens and setting her up with a pair of fake teeth. Imagine sitting in makeup for 3 hours and then having to walk around half blind afterwards. How uncomfortable.
I want PPI!
The most uncomfortable part of Vladimir's transformation into the Night King in the Game of Thrones series has to be the 6.5 hours of sitting in the makeup chair. Then, once in full Night King garb, the actor had to remember not to blink while in character. The combo of painstaking makeup application and these intense stage directions definitely made for an uncomfortable experience on the Game of Thrones set.
It looks like easy, but it's definitely not so easy.
Another leading woman who had to deal with the absolute torture of full-body makeup application is Zoe Saldana in her role as Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy. Just like J-Law, she had to deal with the trials and tribulations of many color tests to get her to be the perfect shade of green. The Marvel franchise star revealed just how long it took to apply all of her makeup, over 3 hours, and with the help of 2 separate makeup artists. Zoe is quoted saying,
"The whole coming together of Gamora every morning, that was a little grueling."
Famous actress Halle Berry played 6 different characters in Cloud Atlas, so it's surprising that you may have never even seen it. Her makeup transformation into 6 different identities was surely an uncomfortable hassle, as the actress also had to deal with a recently broken foot on set. Her makeup artist Jeremy Woodhead is quoted saying, "Even with all the discomfort she was going through, it was necessary to the story of each character."
That part was thrilling as an actor and a huge challenge.
One of the most well-known makeup movie jobs in history has also been one of the most uncomfortable. When transforming into the Grinch, Jim Carrey is known for being irritated by yellow contact lenses, being restrained by his full bodysuit, and needing the help of a torture specialist to get through the movie shoot.
It was when I did the Grinch, I was literally, the makeup was like being buried alive every day.
You won't believe how many of these actors didn't have any CGI used for their MCU character. Instead, they had hours in a makeup chair. Which actor had such intense body makeup and prosthetics that they literally had to sit in a sauna so it could melt off? How about the actor who carried an extra 8 pounds of weight on their head alone? CGI magic is impressive, but these extraordinary makeup, prosthetic, and costume transformations will blow you away. When it was time to be in the makeup chair, Michael B. Jordan spent a whole 2.5 hours every single day having a whopping 90 individual prosthetics glued and sealed on his body, leaving the actor totally exhausted by the end of it. What's worse is that he was nowhere near the end of his workday since he still actually had to shoot. As for the removal process, well, he was stuck in a sauna to help all the prosthetics actually sweat off.
There she is, in all her glory.
When Tom Hiddleston put on his Loki suit, he was carrying around an extra 30 pounds. Add the headpiece, an extra 8 pounds. A whopping 40 extra pounds at all times. This large and heavy helmet covers Hiddleston's ears, which also limit how much he was able to actually hear. The suit itself was extremely hot and sweaty for the actor, and with the helmet, well, he was facing an overwhelming icky sweat fest every single day. Hiddleston said the whole experience was uncomfortable and left him feeling really claustrophobic.
Where the first piece locks you like that, the second piece zips up and locks you like that, and the third piece is like, eh.
The new Captain America is here. But for Wyatt Russell, it's been a long time coming. He auditioned for the role years ago. When he was cast as the new captain, he actually asked if he could wear Chris Evans' suit. What we see him in here in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, though, is a new costume made just for him. A hot, stiff, difficult, and painful costume. It was so bad that an old shoulder injury of his actually flared up. Part of the reason it's so uncomfortable is because there's supposed to be a sort of presentational effect. Have you ever seen a superhero with bad posture? Next time you watch the show, remember that Russell is working through loads of pain.
Every day there's something that's easier and something that's harder.
She looks good. There's no denying that, but at what cost? Well, Tessa Thompson knows, since she was the one wearing an almost entirely plastic outfit. Definitely not comfortable or breathable. Despite feeling incredibly stiff, hot, and always sweating, Thompson managed to act her way through it. If that weren't tough enough, she also had her fair share of wire work. Discomfort on top of discomfort.
My makeup goes on much faster, but it's like glue. They're actually glue transfers, then they stick to me.
Dave Bautista spent the end of every shoot day as Drax in a sauna. Not a bad gig, right? Think again. He also had a whopping 5 hours in the makeup chair every single day, getting 18 pieces of prosthetic attached and makeup done by 5 different makeup artists. If that weren't bad enough, Bautista had to stand for the majority of it with his arms sticking out. How he still had the energy to perform is a total mystery to us. So how does the sauna fit into all of this? Well, when he first had the makeup on, rubbing it off was so tough on his body that it damaged his skin to the point that he described it looking like hamburger meat. So the best solution was to put him in a sauna so the makeup could just melt off.
Coming together of Gamora every morning, that was a little grueling.
5 hours in the makeup chair before even starting on set is insane. But for Zoe Saldana, it became part of her daily routine when she was playing Gamora. Not only did she have loads of makeup and some facial prosthetics put on, she spent plenty of time being covered in this intense, thick green paste. Not a fun time at all. Elizabeth Debicki had a shorter prep time than many of the other Marvel characters, but she still spent a solid hour and a half with 2 makeup artists at work. Her prep pretty much involved being painted and allowing it to dry until she was ready to get into what was lovingly called the Aisha Taco, aka this giant metal gold dress. While it looks regal and elegant, the costume was made almost entirely of metal, making it super heavy for her to move and work in. Debicki described it as similar to having a child hanging off your back. Yeah, not a great feeling. Robert Downey Jr. has had many costumes over the years when he played Iron Man. But one thing for sure is that none of them were enjoyable to wear. The actor said that his experience with the costumes was so tough at times, it almost led to a personality breakdown. This suit, it's no surprise to learn it's extremely heavy, stuffy, and hot. Remember, he doesn't just have to wear it, but perform intensely in it.
I can't believe I made a whole movie with this thing.
Wyatt Russell may have wanted to wear Chris Evans' suit, but it's probably for the best that he didn't, since Evans detested wearing his Captain America suit. Overall, it was super tight and sweaty. We can see how fitted it is here. Super tough considering how much he has to move and so athletically. The cap was confirmed to be the worst part of the costume. Not only is it kind of awkward looking, it was also super tight and uncomfortable and made it really tricky to hear others' lines. Can you imagine needing 6 people to help you get out of your clothes so you could go to the washroom? If not, ask Brie Larson, since this was her reality filming Captain Marvel in the skin-tight superhero getup. Getting into this costume itself? Well, that just took 2 people and a full half hour. And then there was the tight and restrictive helmet composed of 5 different pieces that all sort of slotted together on her head. Not only was she stuck wearing the extremely uncomfortable costume for hours on end, she also had to fly in it. Painful much?
The worst part is honestly getting an itch, because it's so thick.
Have you ever been on a 15-hour flight? If so, you know it is super uncomfortable, and according to Ant-Man himself, Paul Rudd, that is exactly what wearing his costume was like. The suit is skin-tight, thick, and extremely hot, especially when shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. Rudd admitted that one of the worst parts of wearing the suit was when he had an itch that needed scratching. The suit made it impossible, so he resorted to literally having people on set punch the itchy spots in hopes of deterring the discomfort. It looks like he could still enjoy himself through the pain, though. Karen Gillan essentially has Nebula's skin glued right onto her. See how they added all the prosthetics? While it looks smooth enough, the process was actually quite intense and claustrophobic for the actress. The whole transformation usually took an insane 5 hours to complete, often giving Gillan a start time of 2 a.m. These eyes? Courtesy of 22mm wide black contact lenses. Definitely adds to the claustrophobic feeling. By the way, there is no CGI used on her in the final cut of the film.
When I had the audition, I had no idea how big the character would be.
Palm Clementieff had to spend a crazy 3 hours in the makeup chair each day she was shooting to transform into Mantis. On top of that, Clementieff said keeping a straight face in the makeup chair was super challenging as well.
I liked it very much.
So how exactly did they accomplish this exotic look? Small prosthetics at the top of her forehead acted as marks for her antennae, and her bug-like eyes were courtesy of huge black contacts. It looks cool, but she was left feeling super claustrophobic and uncomfortable because of them.
We do this great black war paint. It's like a tar painted across my face.
Ronan the Accuser looks incredible on screen, but how much work went into bringing him to life? Well, Lee Pace spent countless hours sitting in the makeup chair being painted a periwinkle color, having veins painted in, and of course, these thick black bits on his face. Pace described it like having tar on your face, which doesn't make the whole acting thing easy. It was so painful and restrictive, his face couldn't move naturally at all while it felt so stiff and heavy. On top of all that, he had purple contacts and a headdress. Torture much?
Even just to do this is like 2 pounds, 6 pounds, 10 pounds, 50.
When Michael Chiklis took on the role of the Thing in the first 2 Fantastic Four films, CGI wasn't quite as advanced as it is now. So, he wore a full suit made out of latex and rubber. It took 2 hours to get the full costume on, prosthetic teeth included. When it came to performing, Chiklis struggled with such a stiff costume that made simple tasks like sitting or picking up a bottle of water extremely tough because whenever he moved, the suit would actually tighten and tense up, leaving him in loads of pain.
It was the hottest I've ever been.
Typically, we hear about actors having to get in shape for their Marvel roles, but it was a totally different story for Chris Hemsworth. While he didn't gain weight for his time as Fat Thor, he did carry around some extra weight. An insane 60 to 70 pounds to be exact. Oh yeah, that's just how much the prosthetics weigh without armor. The suit limited how much he was able to move and was generally extremely uncomfortable and super hot.
And I was like all swollen underneath the makeup, and it was...
Turns out a trip to Hawkins isn't all sunshine and daisies, both on screen and behind the scenes. Stranger Things has had their fair share of goriness and horror over the past 3 seasons, and while we may think it looked epic on screen, it's at the expense of the cast suffering through just as many hours in the makeup department as they do on set. It's time to find out just what would make the Stranger Things cast want to trade a day in prosthetics for a trip to the Upside Down instead.
I've been waiting to meet this King Steve everybody's been telling me so much about.
Both Billy Hargrove and Dacre Montgomery were put through the ringer in Season 3, just in different ways. With the Mind Flayer on the loose and getting mixed up with Billy, it resulted in plenty of wounds. Wounds that were all created by the makeup and special effects department. There was no CGI or VFX for this character. Dacre spent hours on end in the makeup chair before heading to set each day. And when Billy was at his worst, Dacre was sporting 33 prosthetics at once. 33! Between him and his stunt double, the makeup team had to create and apply 99 prosthetics in one day. He was wearing so much glue that during one of his lunch breaks, his arm prosthetics got stuck to the tablecloth. What made things even worse is Millie Bobby Brown's knee injury actually caused the filming of Dacre's scenes to be pushed up with barely any notice. The makeup department head Amy L. Forsyth said, "I got a call during the hiatus giving me a heads up about doing the post-sauna scene with Billy on the stairwell getting his wounds nursed the day after we were to get back from hiatus. I hadn't even seen a preview for the sauna fight, so I didn't know how he was getting hurt or where his wounds might be."
I gotta warn you again, and you're banned for life.
The Duffer Brothers were super adamant about including as many practical effects as they could in Stranger Things, which means Season 1 barely required any digital visual effects, including the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon was actually just one big prosthetic suit that was worn by actor Mark Steger. However, opting for practical effects came with some pretty big challenges for Mark. He had to perform some intense stunts in the suit that he couldn't properly hear or see in, but he did say that it helped him remember why he loved film. In the later seasons, the Duffer Brothers eventually decided to move on to more of a CGI route. Let's just say things got a little too gooey.
It's crazy, this is crazy, this is crazy!
Dacre loved being able to embrace Billy by adding on his bad boy characteristics, like his tattoo and scar. However, it was at the expense of spending more time in the makeup chair. After a full day of filming, Dacre would endure another 2 hours removing the prosthetics from his body, including the prosthetics he needed to cover his facial hair shadow. He wore the prosthetics so much that at one point he noticed his body hair wasn't even growing back anymore. Every day when you spend like 2 hours getting them off, like I remember there was a big cut and scar right here. You can see I've got no hair on my arm there because it's just been months and months of shaving right in that spot.
You shouldn't have looked for me.
As much as we all love Steve Harrington now, there was a time where him getting beat up wasn't something we felt bad about. But you might feel bad for Joe Keery when you hear what he had to go through while wearing these prosthetics. Not only was Joe sick on the day they shot these scenes, but he had to have menthol blown in his eyes to achieve the desired effects. Ouch! To be specific, Amy shared that his prosthetics included a swollen jaw lump, cut split lip, and a mixture of cotton and dried blood. She shared her process on Instagram and even called Joe a trooper.
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there.
Will's possession scene took a major toll on Noah Schnapp, both mentally and physically. Not only did he have to put himself in a dark place, but his costume consisted of black contacts that made his eyes burn. His costume was also not designed for the weather. Although it may have looked like it was warm on screen, Noah explains it was filmed in the middle of winter. There was just so much going on. The heaters didn't actually heat up. It wasn't really hot. It was actually really cold because it was winter. The cherry on top of it all was that Noah was so overworked and tired, he woke up the next day with no voice. I was screaming the whole night, and the next morning I woke up and my voice had disappeared. Let me go! Let me go! Movie makeup doesn't always mean gory wounds and scars. Sometimes the actors have a difficult time wearing foundation. Heaps of it. Nancy never really found herself in a situation that led to an injury, but she did spend hours each day in the makeup chair. It may not seem like it, but Natalie Dyer says she wore so much makeup on set that she began suffering from acne. The only solution was for her to amp up her skincare game to prevent it from getting any worse.
We asked for forgiveness, not permission.
What the audience doesn't realize is that prosthetics can sometimes minimize an actor's senses. In this intense shower scene that Dacre had to film, he was so physically involved that he was actually injured without even realizing. He was only able to see the scrapes and bruises that he accumulated on his body after taking off the prosthetics he was wearing. Just listen to him explain his experience.
I was covered head to toe in cuts and bruises, and I took all the skin off the top of my toes.
One of Stranger Things' goriest scenes had to be when a mind flayer literally hatches from Eleven's leg. While the mind flayer in this scene was digitally added in post-production, everything else about the wound was done using makeup and prosthetics. Millie had the benefit of using a prosthetic leg instead of her own, however it was still pretty gross to work with, but not gross enough to stop her from taking an Instagram selfie with it. It took months of research from the makeup department in order to make the leg and wound look as realistic as possible, and it's safe to say they did a Duffer Brother approved job.
I can do it!
Who knew how versatile lip gloss could be? Billy's flayed look was achieved by applying layers and layers of MAC clear lip gloss. All in all, he had to wear a layer of lip gloss, a layer of dirt and mud, and then another layer of lip gloss to seal it all together. As you can imagine, wearing lip gloss wasn't the most comfortable experience, but Dacre said it worked better in the scene that he wasn't constantly having to be sprayed with water all day to achieve the wet look. Just look how big that lip gloss jar is. One of the things we've gathered from going behind the scenes of Stranger Things is that Millie Bobby Brown gives her all into her character Eleven, no matter the circumstances. Filming her scenes in the void shook her to her core. Literally, her wardrobe was not cut out for how cold it was on set that day, especially because she was constantly working with water. The Stranger Things art director said, "The one thing you are missing is that it was freezing cold on stage that day we shot this, and Millie was a real trooper, splashing around in the cold water. SFX tried to heat it, but it was too shallow to retain any heat."
Don't be afraid.
When you think about who the Duffer Brothers were inspired by, Steven Spielberg, Stephen King, and John Carpenter, it's no surprise they went down the practical effects route, even if it was uncomfortable for the Stranger Things cast at times. In addition to all the prosthetics and makeup, they even used practical effects to create a lot of the upside-down set and brutal battle scenes like Bob's demise. Did we mention that Will's body double was so realistically made by the makeup department that they were able to pull off the ultimate prank on Noah Schnapp's mom? The question is, what's worse, wearing prosthetics and makeup or fighting demogorgons? After hearing about how Barb's actress Shannon Purser had to eat baby food for her pool scene, and Bob's actor Sean Astin had to continuously put fake blood in his mouth, we're going with demogorgons.
Do you need some help? I could do her hair.
Whose hair extensions were so hated, the actor actually ripped them out of their head on set. We never would have thought the wigs, costumes, and prosthetics used in the Twilight franchise could be so painful, but actors on set would say otherwise. Anna Kendrick once described it as a nightmare. Which actor could barely see with painful contacts in their eyes? Let's have a look.
Nothing in Twilight is easy.
The legs Bella had after breaking her spine in the Twilight Saga were gaunt-looking prosthetics, made for Stewart to wear while filming. A prop table was built so Stewart's real legs could be hidden away underneath. Under the table, the actress's legs were in sweatpants. Hot and extremely stiff from being stuck still for so long since she had to do all her performing from the waist up. Even getting in and out of the contraption was a hassle, and Stewart needed to have extra hands to help her maneuver the tricky set piece.
Looking down at really flimsy legs is strange.
Throughout Breaking Dawn Part 1, Bella's body underwent some serious changes, and to help bring the looks to life, a combo of CGI and prosthetics were used. The prosthetics added to her face to make her ears look bigger and eyes sunken in, emphasizing how thin she was, took a grueling 3 hours to apply before filming. Stewart had to deal with a lot of extra weight and discomfort while wearing the, as the actress called it, inhumanely large stomach prosthetic. She was totally shocked when she saw just how big the belly prosthetic was.
Too weird?
For the Twilight movies, Pattinson sported his vampire look with loads of makeup to make him look pale and light-colored contacts as well. Those contact lenses drove Pattinson crazy. He wore them for 3 consecutive months and claimed his eyes never got used to it. In fact, he said it felt like he had sand in his eyes the entire time. Even getting them into his eyes was a terrible experience. Pattinson used to have to go through 20 minutes doing each eye, and from the very start, they'd just fold in his eyes anyway. Pattinson blames the lenses for making it difficult for him to perform and express emotion, since the actor said his vision was so impeded, he could only really see 2 orange blobs.
Hey, did you get contacts?
No.
Kristen Stewart was one of the many actors who had to wear contact lenses for her role when filming the Twilight movies. Stewart didn't have a choice in the matter, but from day one, she was looking forward to the day that she got to say goodbye to them. Stewart noted the yellow contacts as the absolute worst ones, since they severely limited the ability to see and made her feel almost claustrophobic.
It's fine.
It's no secret that Robert Pattinson hated the orange wig he had to wear while doing reshoots of Breaking Dawn Part 2. The so-called Frankenstein wig was the result of 6 different pieces combined. However, this isn't the first time the actor dealt with an irritating hairpiece. When Pattinson first booked the role, the plan was actually to have him in hair extensions, to bring the timeless look of Edward to life. Pattinson was not a fan of the idea at all, and one day when he was wearing them, he literally ripped them out of his hair on set. After that, the shaggy vampire look was born.
Your skin is pale white and ice cold.
It wasn't just contact lenses that were a nuisance for Stewart to wear. She also had to deal with painful hair extensions. The actress didn't feel comfortable with them at all, but had to endure them to bring the perfect look to screen. In an interview once, the actress said she described that time in her life simply as really uncomfortable hair extensions. That is saying a lot.
Yeah, I guess so.
Taylor Lautner had to wear an extremely long black wig, which he was very excited to get to shed. Lautner said the wig was so uncomfortable because it was itchy, hot, and just overall annoying. Even the look of it bothered the actor, and he said he didn't recognize himself when he had it on. The wig turned out to be an inconvenience for a lot of people, going so far as to ruin shots regularly. The hair was so long and unruly, it often wound up blowing into Lautner's face. One scene in New Moon was really dampened by the wig. When he was meant to kiss Bella, his hair blew right into his mouth and got caught, leaving him to spit out his hair right before kissing her. The last day they had to use the wig, Lautner ripped it off and the entire crew celebrated since it had been such an annoyance for everyone. After filming, the actor turned down the offer to keep the wig, but has since confessed he wishes he'd held on to it.
You cut your hair off?
In order to achieve Nikki Reed's blonde hair for the films, the actress had to undergo an intense 36 hours of dyeing her hair blonde, followed by bleaching treatments every other day. All this painful treatment destroyed her hair to the point that it actually started falling out. Reed had to stop the intense dyeing treatment, so thankfully she got to switch to a wig for the rest of the saga.
That was
Real
all.
hair.
That thing was a wig.
She's been wearing a wig ever since New Moon.
Among the many Twilight actors who had to wear contacts was Elizabeth Reeser as Esme Cullen. The actress called them beyond annoying, as well as excruciating. The final battle was one of the most painful scenes for the actor to endure. All the snow falling, which was actually tiny bits of paper, started getting caught inside her eyelids, causing them to swell up.
A lot of regrets.
The August wedding. Well, let's just say it didn't feel anything like the warm summer month when they were filming the scene. The actors struggled to get through filming as they shivered in their summer formal wear. Between takes, all the performers huddled together, cuddling under blankets and parkas, just trying to keep warm. Anna Kendrick was only on set a few times, but she didn't escape filming in chilly weather. The actress described the experience as absolutely miserable.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
When Edward and Bella had their prom, it wasn't actually the warm weather most people get to have. The actors were freezing cold, wearing only formal wear while filming, and were quickly covered with parkas and blankets as soon as the cameras stopped.
See, you're dancing.
He may have been working out intensely and sticking to a strict diet, but he still didn't look the part. The actor ended up needing to wear heel lifts inside his shoes, so he looked taller than Kristen Stewart.
For me, Kristen has been absolutely amazing to work with.
In a deleted scene from Eclipse, Bella and Jacob were seen growing old together. Both actors had a lot of prosthetics and aging makeup applied, which is far from a comfortable experience. What made it worse is that afterwards, the team saw the results of the prosthetics, and they decided it looked too awkward to be convincing, so the whole process turned out to be for nothing.
It makes me sick.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge Kristen Stewart's incredibly awkward wig in Breaking Dawn. Her hair was cut to be a much shorter and edgier style after filming The Runaways, so the hair department provided her with a wig to suit the character. However, no one noticed until much after the fact that the wig looked very strange and mismatched from Stewart and the film in general. This wig was memorable, but definitely not for the right reasons.
Really, I'm not. I'm fine.
Don't say you're fine.
When Lautner was playing his wolf self, he really stepped into the role, but was a lot less furry than we'd expect. Instead of having a double step in and take over for the scene that was going to have CGI added anyway, Lautner himself went into full wolf mode and even bent his head down for Bella to pat. This was all while Lautner was in a very awkward, tight, full-body, head-included gray leotard. Definitely not nearly as intimidating as what we saw in the film.
Some of you are gonna get hurt.
It's no surprise that in these movies filled with vampires and werewolves, there would be some uncomfortable costumes. But who knew one franchise could have so many painful wigs?
There's a little, thing that I pull out, and then I put a squeezy tube down into my mouth, and then I can drink from a bottle.
Just how uncomfortable can wearing a Spider-Man suit be? Every Spider-Man film has boasted an extremely vibrant collection of characters equipped with some state-of-the-art costumes and makeup. From those tight Spidey suits to those gruesome villainous prosthetics, the stars of the Spider-Man movies had to get quite uncomfortable when portraying their on-screen personas.
I was just like swinging about in this super creepy way and like trying to talk to Peter.
Who wouldn't want to suit up as Spider-Man? It was our childhood dream to put on the iconic red and blue suit, and that was no different for star Tom Holland.
I feel like my whole life had been leading up to me trying on this suit.
Despite the excitement, wearing the suit on set did come with some setbacks. In fact, Holland believes that he has the hardest suit to wear out of anyone in the Marvel Universe. Whenever Holland has the classic suit on, he's covered head to toe in lycra with no skin showing.
I can't even use my phone. And I'm 23, like I use my phone a lot.
In fact, Holland isn't even able to scratch an itch on his face in the costume. It's just one of the costs of being Spider-Man.
It looks amazing, it feels terrible.
The costume designers behind the Mysterio suit wanted to make sure that it was as practical as possible. Since the bulky costume wasn't particularly the most comfortable fit, the producers assumed that Gyllenhaal wouldn't want to be wearing the villain's threads in too many scenes.
You know, it's like wearing a ball gown. They sort of like grab your back. You're all of a sudden choked by this.
Right.
Though Gyllenhaal was more than willing, and even a little excited, to bear through the discomfort and wear the Mysterio costume whenever he would see fit. So not only is this costume practical, but he wears it everywhere. It makes sense to wear it, so we think this looks amazing.
It took a little bit of time to put on, but once it was on, yeah, it made me feel pretty strong.
It wasn't just Alfred Molina who took on the persona of Doc Ock. Director Sam Raimi wanted the villain's trademark claws to actually be practical effects, which led to puppeteers acting around Molina to make his robotic tentacles look more alive. Molina needed to do rehearsals in costumes so he could get accustomed to moving around in the complicated suit.
People understand how much the actors are doing, because you think, oh, it's all magical CGI stuff.
Topher Grace had to undergo a grueling makeup process to become the iconic Spider-Man villain Venom for the third film in the original trilogy. I had 4 hours of prosthetic makeup every morning when I was Venom, and just getting on the suit takes about 45 minutes before that, so I had to get there at 3 or something. Grace also had to go through an extensive workout routine to gain around 20 pounds for the role. In order for Dane DeHaan to become the grotesque and slimy Green Goblin, the makeup took over 3 hours. Initial designs for the gross-looking villain had DeHaan taking on an even greener look as the iconic Spider-Man villain, but the makeup department decided to go for a look that felt more slightly human than full-on goblin.
That's how I started out, playing pretend and dressing up as superheroes.
Dane DeHaan's goblin suit weighed 50 pounds and took an hour to put on. The set where DeHaan was required to be in his goblin getup was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And because of the extreme conditions, DeHaan lost 7 pounds in just 2 days. Now that's impressive. Jamie Foxx had the distinct advantage of having 2 distinctive styles as Max Dillon, aka Electro, in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it was his villain's nerdy alter ego that was internally painful for typically sleek and smooth Fox. Fox dubbed his hair on set as the first black comb-over, and he also sported a gap in his teeth. When I was Max on the streets, girls are like, look at Jamie Foxx, at that hair, oh my god, something is off with him. At the same time, Fox was at least somewhat relieved that he wouldn't be as bombarded with attention, since he figured there'd be plenty of people who wouldn't recognize him. Honestly though, most people would be able to recognize Jamie Foxx, no matter the makeup.
Hey y'all, tell everybody, Electro's in town.
The makeup department behind Jamie Foxx's Electro look had to get very experimental in order to prevent inhibiting Fox's performance as the blue-skinned villain. Very thin pieces of silicone were applied all over Fox's body in order for the look to be much more believable. On top of the silicone, Fox had to wear glowing blue contact lenses.
It was a great choice to be in this film, and I'm happy and fortunate that they chose me.
While Rhys Ifans' full lizard form was mostly CGI, there still was plenty of makeup work to be done for the transitioning stages of the villain. Ifans would spend up to 7 to 8 hours in the makeup chair to complete his green, scaly look. After 7 hours in a chair with not enough cigarettes, I was kind of in the right mental state to play a man who was about to transform into a 9-foot lizard with a dangerous tail. The prosthetics caused a lot of chafing on Ifan's body, which led him to walking around like a cowboy for several days after filming. After all, there has to be some side effects from becoming the Lizard. Marvel was extremely strict about what Holland was supposed to wear underneath his costume. During Holland's first day on set, he was given thongs by the crew as the only thing he could wear under the Spider-Man costume. I had serious misgivings. Would my ever be the same again? But I had to get used to it.
So essentially, I have to wear, pajamas.
Michael Keaton's Vulture suit stands out in how it combines the classic Marvel style with something a bit more grounded. I can't tell you, there are hundreds maybe of little screws, literally, that special wrenches made to put the boots in a certain way. A costume this intricate took quite some time to fully equip on Keaton.
I don't know what my favorite costume was because it's like, what, 7:30? I'm barely awake. I barely know where I am.
Andrew Garfield wasn't necessarily thrilled the first time he put on his Spider-Man suit. The suit he wore was made of a material that was designed to make you irritated. On top of that, Garfield's suit was skin tight, which led to more of his body being visible to the public than we would have preferred. One of the first nights, we were out on location in downtown LA. We were in a parking structure. I knew there were paparazzi taking terrible, unflattering shots of my, everything. It was an acting exercise.
It was just a lot to hold. I struggled to hold it all. I kind of rejected it a lot.
Rules were so strict that Holland claimed that even simply drinking water in the Spidey suit was dangerous. This led to Holland and the costume designers having to brainstorm ways to adapt, as obviously, Holland would need some fluids while filming in the heat.
I can kind of get it. I've had a Kit Kat in the suit now.
The left eye on the Spidey costume would have a squeezy tube attached that Holland would have to pull out and put into his mouth so he could get a drink of water. How refreshing.
I loved in Spider-Man, particularly playing the double role.
Willem Dafoe is known for his very distinguishable jawline, so when playing Norman Osborn in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, he needed to look more like how the billionaire character looked in the comics. Dafoe was given dental prosthetics to make his teeth look straighter as the main villain, though the prosthetics were removed whenever his character would look at himself in the mirror.
And they were really fun to do.
While Willem Dafoe surprisingly did not need much prosthetic work done, the acclaimed thespian still had some discomfort about the Green Goblin's technologically advanced costume. Dafoe called his experience in costume severe, though he still had a great time on set. Whenever Tom Holland put on that Spider-Man suit, he knew there was no going back for him, in many ways, like having to wait to go to the bathroom.
An accident is not an option. That suit is so expensive. They'll be so upset with me.
In fact, Holland would have to plan going to take a bathroom break 45 minutes in advance. Hopefully there were no accidents while filming. Tobey Maguire wore the iconic red and blue Spider-Man suit over the course of 3 films. Just because he had a longer tenure as the character than somebody like Andrew Garfield, that didn't make the suit any more comfortable. In fact, the black symbiote suit that Maguire wore in the 3rd film proved to be the most uncomfortable suit of them all. It can ride up in the crotch a little bit. It's not really the outerwear of the suit, it's the inner bit that rides up. Well, at least it wasn't Flash Thompson giving the wedgies this time. Tobey Maguire holds the title of being the first actor to portray Spider-Man on the big screen, and with that, the costume designers were still trying to work through crafting the perfect Spider-Man costume. In order to get the costume right, the designers had to do a full-body cast of Maguire, which wasn't the most fun experience for the actor. I had to stand there for a couple of hours, and then the stuff sticking to the hair on my body, and they ripped it off, and it was extremely painful. Maguire even initially had a hard time acting with the Spider-Man mask on, though he was able to get used to it quite quickly. While Andrew Garfield's comics-accurate Spider-Man suit may have been a fan favorite in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, it was far from comfortable for Garfield to wear.
It was a very specific experience, and I imagine it'll be different every time.
Garfield blamed his British reverse on the reason why he was uncomfortable in the costume. Spandex does not suit the British. You are pretty much naked, so you have to trust what you have is enough. Paul Giamatti's Rhino suit required plenty of CGI, but that didn't prevent his on-set appearance from being an uncomfortable one. In fact, Giamatti's costume while filming required him to be attached to a large metal-like structure, some of which he'd wear with backpack straps. There's clearly a lot that goes into making these Spider-Man characters look as good as they do, from hours-long makeup applications to extravagant prosthetics and uncomfortable costumes.